Mention the name Leonard Peltier to Americans in Times Square, and chances are you will be met with blank stares. Mention it in Red Square, and you have named a hero.
Leonard Peltier?
Да.
Ну, здравствуйте, индийский. Да-да-да, слышали, слышали.
Да.
Peltier? Конечно.
He is the subject of posters and rallies. The man the vast Soviet propaganda machine believes to be the best living example of American injustice. 15 million Soviet signatures have been sent to the White House on behalf of this convicted murderer, unknown beyond the Great Plains of the American West.
Got a very special request going out for Leonard Peltier is doing 2 consecutive life sentences at a federal penitentiary. Here's one going out for Leonard Peltier.
This is the canvas the crime was painted on, a landscape already stained with blood. The Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in the Badlands of South Dakota, where barely 100 years ago, the 7th Cavalry destroyed the great Sioux Nation. Today, the survivors battle extinction and poverty unmatched anywhere in America. For many, the war continues, with Leonard Peltier, the last Sioux brave.
It's a concentration camp without a fence. I look at him as a great leader. We're all praying for him, and we're still here. And he opened the road for us. He showed many of us a light.
Today, Peltier is perhaps the most famous resident of Leavenworth, Kansas, the place where 100 years ago, the federal government used to store renegade Indians.
On June 26, 1975, on the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation in South Dakota, FBI agents Jack Kohler and Ronald Williams were shot to death at virtually point-blank range. Were you involved in that?
No. No, I was not.
You didn't pull the trigger?
No.
Were you there?
I was in the area, yes.
Why do you believe you're here at Leavenworth Prison?
Someone had to pay for the murders of their agents.
You were railroaded?
Well, definitely, definitely.
Are you guilty of anything?
I'm guilty of trying to stop the injustices that are happening to Indian people in Indian territories and Indian country.
To understand the case, you must understand the times. Following the 1973 occupation of government offices at Wounded Knee by the militant American Indian movement that Peltier was part of, Pine Ridge was an armed camp, thought to have the highest murder rate in the country and the highest concentration of FBI agents. There were SWAT teams and memos proposing paramilitary operations in Indian country, all during a time of well-documented government misconduct against dissident political groups, including AIM.
We didn't bring no war to them. They brought it to us. And we have a right to protect ourselves. We have a right to protect our people, our way of life, and our land. And if need be, we'll do it again.
Bob Robidoux was here the day that 2 federal officers and an Indian man were killed in a shootout. FBI agents Jack Kohler and Ronald Williams drove onto the Jumping Bull Ranch, ostensibly looking for a young Indian accused of stealing some cowboy boots. Before long, shots broke out. No one knows who fired the first one.
Did you know they were FBI agents?
No, I didn't have any idea who they were. I was just responding to the fire.
You don't know who fired the first shot?
No, I have no idea who fired the first shot. And I don't feel it matters. We felt at that time that we were at war, and when we were attacked, we were going to defend ourselves. I was right here, and the 2 individuals that I was firing on and whom were firing on me were located about 100 to 150 yards from us.
The 2 FBI agents?
That's correct.
Where was Leonard?
Leonard was located and right by that large tree right down there.
He was there the whole time?
That's right. He was there. He never moved from that spot.
Robidoux, Peltier, and another Indian named Dino Butler admit firing at the agents from long range in self-defense. But they deny the government contention that they were the ones who went to the car after the 2 wounded agents had surrendered and shot them in the face at close range with high-powered rifles.
I know he didn't kill those 2 FBI agents because when we went down to where those agents were, they were already dead, and I was there with him.
Robidoux and Butler were captured, tried, and found not guilty of murdering the two FBI agents. The jury found they had acted in self-defense. Today, Leonard Peltier would almost certainly be a free man if he had stood trial with them, but he had escaped to Canada and would have to face a separate trial.
If you weren't directly involved in either Kohler's or Williams's death, why did you run?
We figured everybody that was there was going to be charged with it. You know, we've been experiencing American justice for 200 years and or more, and it don't matter if you're innocent.
All they had left was Leonard, and they needed one victim, one person who would be convicted of this crime in order to clear the deck for the FBI.
William Kunstler, Peltier's post-trial attorney, maintains that the government's misconduct began during the extradition process, that it would never have gotten Peltier back from Canada to stand trial without coercing witnesses and fabricating testimony.
They created two affidavits from a young Indian woman, Myrtle Poorbear, who was emotionally disturbed, and they fraudulently made these two affidavits. In fact, she was never at the Jumping Bull compound on that date. They had her saying things that she saw Leonard murder the agents and so on. And yet each affidavit contradicted the other one.
When they presented that evidence, I was quite aware of that I wasn't going to receive a fair trial, and there was going to be manipulation, manufacturing of evidence, and that's precisely what they did.
Myrtle Poorbear, a disturbed woman with a long history of alcoholism and psychiatric disorders, would be the only person to ever swear that she saw Leonard Peltier kill the two FBI agents. She would later recant, saying the testimony had been coerced. But when she tried to testify to that for the defense at Peltier's trial, she was ruled incompetent. Later, a federal appeals judge would call the entire Poorbear episode an abuse of the investigative process by the FBI.
What Judge Ross was saying is that we should have spotted what a fruitcake Myrtle Poorbear was right from the start, and therefore using and relying upon her testimony really in and of itself was not good judgment.
Federal prosecutor Lynn Crooks put together the case against Peltier, and he still defends the use of the Poorbear affidavits in trying to get Peltier back from Canada.
I don't know why they shipped up what they did, because I wasn't involved in it, but I can guarantee you if I would have been, I would have shipped up her affidavits.
Even though you believed her to not be a credible witness?
Yeah. During a probable cause stage. Wouldn't have bothered me at all. I'd basically said, Judge, here's what we got.
No matter how you cut it, you can't get away from the fact that it was her testimony that got Leonard Peltier extradited from Canada to stand trial.
I guess I don't ultimately know, and ultimately I don't really care. Doesn't bother my conscience. If everything they say is right on that, doesn't bother my conscience one bit. The man's a murderer. He got convicted on fair evidence. Doesn't bother my conscience one whit. Now, I don't agree that we did anything wrong with that, but I can tell you it don't bother my conscience if we did.
But in fact, there was real question as to whether Peltier was convicted on fair evidence. It was in this courtroom that the defense claims the ultimate fabrication took place. During the trial, the government maintained the key piece of evidence was a shell casing from a rifle linked to Peltier that was found next to the agents' bodies. Proof, they said, he fired the fatal shots. In fact, this FBI teletype acknowledged that none of the shell casings found at the scene had been fired by Peltier's rifle.
Did the defense have access to that ballistics report?
No, it was hidden from them. It came long after the trial through a Freedom of Information Act suit which procured it.
As we sat there at trial, we're saying to ourselves, when are they going to hit us with that October 31st teletype? We're waiting to get impeached. They don't do it. They never mentioned the stupid thing. They didn't use their best evidence.
Well, they claim they didn't have it.
Oh, they're lying.
But the record from the United States Court of Appeals shows the defense was not lying.
The FBI withheld from the defense a good deal of ballistic information which might have been helpful.
Federal Appeals Court Judge Gerald Haney would eventually rule that there was a possibility the withheld evidence might have changed the jury's mind. But that in itself did not meet the standard for granting Peltier a new trial. Haney called it the toughest decision he ever had to make in 22 years on the federal bench. And today, he remains uncomfortable with it because of the government misconduct.
I felt a degree of uncomfort with our decision because of the Myrtle Poor Bear incident, because the ballistic expert had not made available to the defense all of the information that he had at the time of trial.
Most of what you've heard here has never been presented to a jury. The Myrtle Poor Bear story, the ballistics evidence, information on tensions at the Pine Ridge Indian Reservation. They were all either unavailable at the time or ruled inadmissible.
I mean, if the government was going to go out and frame somebody, it wouldn't have been Leonard Peltier. He's a nobody. He's a murderer. And I guess I feel personally about him exactly the same way I feel about every murderer that I've ever prosecuted. He got just what's coming to him.
A political prisoner does not mean that you had to be the leader of the movement, but you're a symbol of the movement. And to put Leonard Peltier away is a symbol of the movement, which is supposed to tell other Native Americans that you better watch your step.
It appeared to me that the FBI was equally to blame for the shootout, and that the entire responsibility can't be placed on Peltier.
Yet Leonard Peltier remains in Leavenworth Prison, serving 2 consecutive life sentences, his appeals exhausted. Amnesty International and some 50 U.S. congressmen have requested that he be given a new trial. California Congressman Don Edwards chairs the House Subcommittee on Civil and Constitutional Rights.
We get lots of mail about Leonard Peltier. They're from all over the world, but certainly from all over the United States, people who feel very strongly about Leonard and think deeply that he should get a new trial. And I think he ought to get a new trial. I can't understand why not. That would resolve all our problems. And if he was found guilty again, so what?
Whiskey River, take my mind.
A number of prominent entertainers have also taken up Peltier's cause, only, they say, to run into trouble with law enforcement. This 1987 Willie Nelson benefit was picketed by disgusted FBI agents.
He killed 2 FBI agents.
Police departments around the country joined in, threatening to withdraw security from future Willie Nelson concerts unless the singer apologized.
What has to happen, do you think, for Leonard Peltier to get another trial? Aren't all the appeals exhausted?
They are. A miracle has to happen. I know that the Soviet Union would take him.
С разрешения американских властей советские врачи окажут Леонарду Пелтierу консультативную.
The Soviets, quick to exploit the propaganda value of the case, have offered Peltier political asylum, and they keep the story on the evening newscasts. Even Mikhail Gorbachev managed to find time at the last summit to sign his Russian autobiography and send it off to Comrade Leonard.
What does it say? What did you write, you know?
I have no idea.
After 13 years in prison, Peltier has learned to accept help and support wherever he can find it.
You don't care that the Soviet Union may have human rights problems of its own?
No, I care, because I don't like to see injustices done to anybody. I don't like to see any human being mistreated. But one thing about Indian people is that you must understand is that when the United States, we don't believe everything the United States government tells us. They've been lying to us for 500 years. I mean, they've put out some very terrible propaganda against us. We're savages, heathens, and we don't believe everything they say about people.
Of course the Soviet Union uses the case, just as we use Sharansky and Sakharov. All governments do that. There's nothing wrong in that.